Right now, there's a demand for answers over at the Pentagon, up on Capitol Hill, over the deaths of 4 U.S. troops at the hands of ISIS-affiliated terrorists in Niger. Defense officials tell CNN that the Defense Secretary, James Mattis, is seriously dismayed at the lack of information he's been given. And just a while ago, Senator John McCain, he's the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, spoke about his committee's need for more details.
Senator, on the Niger mission, what does the committee need to know in terms of details? Can you be more specific?
Everything.
What steps will you take, Senator, to get to the bottom of this? What steps will you take for the community to get to the bottom of this?
Subpoena. I did have a good conversation with General McMaster, and they said that they would brief on us. We had a long friendship, and we'll hopefully get all the details.
Will you wait until
forthcoming? Do you feel the administration's been forthcoming up to this point about what happened there?
Of course not.
Of course not. He said when he was asked if the administration's been forthcoming up to this point about what happened in Niger. Let's go to our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr. She's joining us now. Barbara, so what are some of the big questions here? What do we know and what do we don't know?
Well, look, Wolf, this 12-man team led by Green Berets was supposed to be going on a fairly routine mission. They were told it was unlikely, according to the intelligence, that they would run into opposition forces. They'd been in the area before with no reported problems, and they walked right into an ISIS ambush by some 50 ISIS fighters. So this starts with what kind of intelligence was provided to this team. When they ran into the ISIS ambush, ISIS had rocket-propelled grenades. They had machine guns. The U.S. troops, they only had the rifles that they were carrying at the time. They weren't in armored vehicles. They didn't have any need for them, they thought. And so this turned into a very nasty situation for these troops very, very quickly. They tried to call for help, and some French military aircraft did come overhead, French Mirage jets, but in Niger, where they were operating, that government there does not allow offensive airstrikes. So all the help they could get was to have these jets fly overhead and try and scare off the ISIS fighters. It took close to an hour for medevac to come in to evacuate the dead and the wounded. But that left Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, the young man you see there on your far right, 25 years old, not aboard. They did not have him when they took off, and it took 48 hours to locate his body. The big question for the families, for all military families, remains, how did a man get left behind? Battlefields are confusing places in the middle of a firefight, but still, the medevac happened, the dead and the wounded were evacuated, and they did not have Sergeant LaDavid Johnson.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Then they got to learn, they got to study what happened here to make sure it doesn't happen again. Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thanks very much. I want to dig a little bit deeper.